Okay, so I just finished therapy. I meditated this morning, did therapy, and we were talking about dissociation, which I know I've talked about a lot in my videos. And dissociation is being on a spectrum. And part of the reason we were talking about dissociation was because I was telling her the connection I made to when I hurt my hand, and having this like out of body experiencing, recognizing that I was having this experience, and like I was able to connect to the fact that I'm having this experience, but I'm not the experience. I'm not the hand that's looks really fucked up right now. I'm just having this experience and I'm actually okay. I'm strong, healthy, happy, healed in this space, right? And then she was suggesting or asking, like maybe when you passed out, it was kind of like that, like maybe, when you're talking about parts therapy or whatever, maybe it was like one of those parts from the past, like that it was connecting to that, or it was like a trigger to that or something, which was really interesting. I hadn't thought about. And then we got to talking, and this is something I was like I've been kind of contemplating in general, but people who experience mental illness in particular, is it mental illness or there's this part of me that really like, it's like we say mental illness is in such a way that's like, it's just the negative connotation with it just kind of makes me go, well, it's mental illness because it doesn't work in this society of duality. And from what I'm feeling like I'm understanding more of dissociation for myself, is that dissociation was actually a really fucking good thing for me. The ability to exit a very traumatic, horrible experience and connect to the thing I really am, which is consciousness, which is already strong, healthy, happy, healed, connecting to that and essentially holding self in there. And you're coming out of something that's horrible. I'm looking at that in a different light now. And I'm starting to wonder that like maybe a lot of the things that we call like illness, what if those are superpowers? So like people who experience, and that's absolutely not to discredit or take away the difficulty or suffering behind it that people go through. That's not what I'm saying. I think possibly part of the suffering is that it feels like it doesn't work in society, but then I go, but what works in this society really? Like what's actually working in this society? Like, aren't there so many issues beyond that? Like just where we're at as a human race is, in a lot of ways, it's suffering. It's not working in general. But what if we really were to look at people who have mental illness, and maybe somebody who's experiencing, hearing voices or seeing things that aren't there for most people, what if they're just tapped into another dimension? What if it is there? It's just not what the majority of our human experience is witnessing. Maybe similar to dissociation, they are just connected to something greater because circumstances that they may have gone through push them to that limit to have that experience. Maybe we should be looking at them for answers into how to alleviate a lot of suffering that we experience in general as a society. Maybe it's not illness, maybe it's superpower. Again, this is not to say that what people go through is not painful and that there's suffering there, but I think that possibly a lot of the suffering is induced because of the rejection and the judgment and where our society currently is in terms of putting people in boxes and reprimanding for what they cannot see or believe or open their eyes to or come to terms with. And I just think that science should maybe, consider that a little bit more, or look into that a little bit more, and maybe changing the terms, instead of having such a negative connotation. I don't know. These are just things I was thinking about that I thought was worth sharing, and maybe we could discuss that, because I think a lot of people struggle with mental illness, and even being on a neurodivergent spectrum of some sort. We have that there, and it's like, well, when you think about it, like, okay, well, who's not neurodivergent anymore? Like, and why are these things looked at as being like disability, or why? Because I really think in a lot of ways they're like a superpower. There are things to learn and to consider and utilize with some people experiencing these things. And I think I don't know, I think it's worth a dialogue at the very least, and maybe studying a bit more in that way. I would love to hear your thoughts.